Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is your girl Cecilia Amabo. Thank you very much for the love you've been showing me on this channel, for your likes, for your views, for your subscriptions, for your comments. Most especially, I love the comment section, the interaction and everything. So I just want to say a big thank you to all of you who have been part of this journey and your support in the comment section. If you are a new subscriber or a new if you're new to this channel, please kindly like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comment section as well. And if you are a returning subscriber, what can I say? Much love and respect for your views and your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and everything. I just love you all. And please continue to share your ideas and your thoughts in the comment section. Welcome. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, welcome back to today's incredible episode. Over the past months, we've dwelt a lot on the Sahel region. We've dwelt a lot on the Sahel Confederation, as well as Burkina Faso, most especially, because most of our people love the incredible and the delectable president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore. But today we want to do something different. We have talked about the Sahel Confederation. Most people have only known about Burkina Faso. They see more on Burkina Faso, but they don't know what is happening with Mali. They don't know what is happening with Niger, and also another Sahel state like the Guinea. But we want in today's episode to cover Niger, and I will bring in another episode on Guinea, and again I will bring in something on Mali. Guinea is not part of the Sahel Confederation, but Guinea forms part of the Sahel states. So we will discuss more in this. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk today. Today, we want to dive into the unfolding saga in Niger, a nation at the heart of West Africa, which has recently undergone a dramatic and controversial shift in its political landscape. On July 26, 2023, we all saw what happens in the news. The democratically elected president of Niger, Mohamed Bazoum, was ousted in a military coup d'etat led by General Abdourahamane, head of the presidential guard. This event did not happen in a vacuum. It was a combination of mounting tension, dissatisfaction, and a complete or a complex interplay of factors that ultimately led to the system shift in Nigerian politics. So, ladies and gentlemen, what was it about? Let us look a little on the backdrop of this coup d'etat. What happened before there was even a coup d'etat? Because we all know that leaders are elected. Well, in some cases that we've seen in recent years, there's been a lot of power grab through military coup d'etat. But what happened? What sparked this military coup? What was really the cause? So let's look at the backdrop. So for us to understand why this coup happened, we must first consider the backdrop against which it unfolded, like I said. So President Bazoum, who came to power in 2021 through a democratically elected election process. So it is said that he inherited a country plagued by severe security challenges. Niger has long been in a battleground in the fight against Islamist insurgency linked to groups such as the Boko Haram, the Al-Qaeda, the ISIS. We all know how the Sahel state has been a battleground for Boko Haram and for all the anti-terrorism and all that fight that has been happening. So Niger has also suffered its own fair share, just like Burkina Faso and Mali. So despite significant international support to the Nigerian government, particularly from France, or we'll talk more about France, particularly from France, which maintained a military base in Niger as part of its Operation Bahen, the situation in the country remains dire. Many in Niger, especially within the military, viewed President Bazoum, who was the elected president at the time, that President Bazoum's government has as ineffective. They consider his government as ineffective in addressing the security threats to the country. The constant attack by jihadis in the Sahel region, coupled with high level of corruption, economic mismanagement, as a sense of disenfranchisement among certain groups. So this fueled widespread discontent in the country. The military, which has traditionally played a central role in Niger's politics, felt the Bazoum's administration was not only failing to secure the nation, but was also sidelining them in the decision-making process. So, ladies and gentlemen, this growing dissatisfaction reached a tipping point in July 2023. So General Abdourahamane and his supporters in the military decided that action needed to be taken to save Niger from what they perceived as a government that was not only failing, but also dangerously disconnected from the realities on the ground. They formed the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland, called the CNSP, and swiftly moved to detain Bazoum, citing the government's inability to effectively combat the Islamist insurgency and protect the people of Niger as a primary reason for their intervention. This is what the Abdourahmane's government, or the present government, gave as a reason for the coup d'etat. So what happened post the coup d'etat? Let us also look into this, and we will come into details of all of this. So following that coup d'etat, General Abdourahamane and the CNSP moved quickly to consolidate their power. They suspended the constitution, they dissolved the National Assembly, they declared a state of emergency, and then they appointed military officers to key positions in the government to further assert their control over the state. Yeah, they came prepared. They dissolved the National Assembly. They declared a state of emergency, and then appointed his trusted allies within the military in certain positions, in the key positions in the government, meaning that they really respect him, and they will not do anything against his will. So these are his subordinates, or these are people that are truly 100% loyal to him. And so they did this in order to assert control over the government. Once, one of the most significant and controversial moves by the junta was that their decision to terminate military agreement with France and demand the withdrawal of French troops from Niger. This is a very bold step, and we've seen this trend within the Sahel regions. We saw how Burkina Faso ousted France in Burkina Faso. We saw how the president of Mali also did the same. Guinea, they've also sent France out of their country. And this is very important because France has had a domination over these countries for decades and decades and decades. And these are all French colonies. And we know that even after independence, France still, all these countries still pay colonial debts to French treasury. So, but when this, when the current president came to power, he decided that what has been keeping France in Niger has to be terminated. And the military agreement comes first, because that is what France has been using to hold control over Niger. And this is what he came in to do. So this decision was a clear signal that the new regime was not out to play. They were serious, and they were doing real business about breaking the past and redefining Niger's position on the global stage. It was also a response to the widespread perception that foreign military presence has done little to improve the security while undermining Niger's sovereignty. And we know wherever France goes, France wants to take domination, and that is what France has been doing over the last decades in Niger. So, but what is the international reaction? What was the international reaction to this coup? We have a couple. And of course, there's always a reaction from the international community whenever there is a coup d'etat in any country. So the international response to the coup was a swift and severe one. Within the region, we have the ECOWAS. We all saw that ECOWAS sanction, the regional economic community condemned the coup in the strongest terms and imposed a sanction on Niger. It was severe. The sanctions were severe on Niger. The sanctions included border closures, financial restrictions, the suspension of aid, all aimed at pressuring the junta regime to restore constitutional order and reinstate the President Bazoum. ECOWAS even went as far as threatening a military intervention in Niger until when other countries rise, other nations like really rose up, and former leaders, as a matter of fact, former leaders in the African continent and those that really hold power and authority advised against this. And we are happy that they actually listened to the advice of these leaders and withdrew their decision to intervene for a military intervention in Niger. And let's not forget that the current chairperson of the ECOWAS is the Nigerian President Tinubu, who is also currently facing his own drama in Nigeria through the severe protests that are happening in Nigeria. So they actually did this to escalate tension in the region. And the leaders came in and said, if you go into Niger for a military intervention, then you are in for what you will not be able to contain. And we are glad that they listened to the advice and withdrew that action of military intervention. But however, the junta remained defiant. They didn't bother whether ECOWAS was coming in with a military intervention. They were ready for ECOWAS, they were ready for France, they were ready for any other country that was going to rise against them. So they declared it, they made it very clear that they were ready. So they stayed defiant, rejecting the demands and seeking support from other military-led governments in the region. So at the time, Niger was not alone. Burkina Faso, Mali had also suffered in the hands of Boko Haram and is still suffering in the hands of Islamic insurgency, terrorist attack in that region. So these countries, which had also experienced recent coup d'etat, expressed solidarity with Niger, making a significant shift in the geopolitical landscape in West Africa. And we all saw what happened after that. So the formation of the Sahel Confederation in July 2024, which brought together Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, was a direct response to this pressure mounted on Niger by ECOWAS and other foreign powers. So this pressure and an attempt to forge a new path based on regional cooperation and resistance to Western influence. So these countries, they know what they've suffered in the hands of the West. Maybe the other countries in the ECOWAS, they have really not suffered in the hands of the West, which we all know they've suffered. But this one stood out and said, we've had enough. We have to break out from foreign domination. So they took their own path, and we are seeing how it is growing. We've seen enormous support to the Sahel Confederation since its formation. And we're going to take a new segment on that to really analyze what has happened after the Sahel Confederation. Who are the countries that have been supporting the Sahel Confederation? But what has changed? Are there other countries joining the Sahel Confederation, or what is happening within that confederation? So this is what we're going to be analyzing in subsequent videos. So what is the economic path and social impact on this decision, or the recent coup d'etat and the present government in Niger? What has it brought to the people of Niger? They saw ineffectiveness, they saw incompetence, and they came in. So what has changed since the junta regime took over? So the coup and the subsequent sanctions have had profound economic and social impact on Niger. The closure of borders and suspension of financial transactions has also escalated existing economic challenges, leading to shortages of essential goods, rising inflation, increased hardship for ordinary Nigerians. Despite these difficulties, the junta has maintained a strong grip on power, using nationalist rhetoric to rally support and suppress dissent. So public opinion in Niger has been divided. Then it was divided, and now we still have a fraction of people who still believe that maybe Bazoum was the best option. So while some view the military action as necessary to restore security and sovereignty, others are deeply concerned about suspension of democratic process and the potentials for increased isolation from the international community. And we all know that there is no nation that can truly function on its own without support from international community. International community must not mean the West. That means that we just country that is not that country. So it has bilateral relations, multilateral relations. So that is what most of the people were afraid of. But as we can all see, they've already formed an alliance with, they've created a Sahel Confederation, and they're also creating alliance with Russia and with China to support, along with this alignment and this Sahel Confederation. That indicates a significant shift away from the traditional Western reliance. Yeah, so they don't want to rely on the West totally. This is what has been happening, but let us break it step by step and see what the drastic steps that have been taken, the positive change that has happened in Niger since the current president regime took over from Bazoum. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So what are some of the domestic policies that President Abdourahamane had taken? So what are some of the Abdourahamane? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, like I said in my introductions, a lot has happened within Niger since the military took over in the coup in July 2023. So, but what are some of the major domestic policies that President Abdourahamane Tchiani has taken since he took over as the current president of Niger? So, like I mentioned in my introduction, he has suspended Niger's constitution and dissolved its democratic institutions. Those institutions that were established by the former president, he has dissolved those institutions. So the military government has emphasized on restoring security in the country, which faces severe threat from Islamist insurgency or militants. And this is one of the major domestic policy that he has taken. But when it comes to foreign relations, what has he done? There is a serious anti-Western stand for this government. So President Abdourahamane has adopted a strongly anti-Western stand, particularly targeting France. Yes, targeting France. There are other Western powers that are operating in Niger, but their influence or control over Niger is not as much as France is controlling Niger, because France feels Niger is part of its own, and it's always having that strong authority control over its social, political, and economic life. But the current president is saying that no, he has a very strong stand against France, just like the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, also has a very strong stand against France. So this has France has had a long-standing military presence in Niger. We all know this. Those of us in Africa know this. The West know this. Those who study African politics also know this, that France has a very long-standing military presence in Niger. So the junta regime is demanded the withdrawal of French troops in August 2023. And we all saw that it didn't just demand for it, it forced it out of Niger. It forced it out of Niger. It terminated the military agreement which France had with Niger and escalated even more tension between these two countries. But they were not concerned about how France failed. They were more concerned about the protection of Niger, the people of Niger, the resources of Niger, the sovereignty of Niger, because Niger feels that their sovereignty is not, they are not truly a sovereign nation. They may say that Niger is an independent nation, but they are not truly independent. And so it has to take dominance and take control over it and maintain its independence. Because when you say independence means independence, you truly have to make sure that you have control over your military, your economic power, your political system, your social system, and any socio-political and every other thing that has to do with the running and the effective running of your country. And this is what the President Abdourahamane is saying, that France has to withdraw, and they withdrew. There was no negotiation about this, and they did. And this is what we want to see. All African countries where France has a lot of domination, they should send France out. Of course, the puppets in Yaoundé will never do so, but we are happy to see other nations that are actually taking action against France. Also, the current president or the current administration in Niger saw the need to align itself with other countries, and that is where it aligned with the Sahel Confederation. So Niger became part of the new leadership that has formed the Sahel Confederation alongside with Mali and Burkina Faso. So both of which are also under military rule. All these countries are under military rule because they also saw the ineffectiveness of their own leaders, and they went ahead and took over power through a military coup d'etat. And we have seen how incredible some of these countries are doing under this military rule. So, but are we here to encourage military coup d'etats? That is not my place to say. I am not here to promote military coup d'etats. I am here only to talk about the vision of Africa and Pan-Africanism, the need for the true independence, total and complete independence of Africa. This is what we want. Not disguised independence, because what we have in Africa is never a true independence, but disguised independence, because we still have a lot of foreign influence, Western influence in Africa, controlling the very decisions that govern the countries that they claim are already independent countries. They sit and they manipulate the political system, they manipulate decision-making, they manipulate the economy, they manipulate the financial institutions, the legal system and everything. And yet they claim Africa is independent. It is not truly independent, but we are seeing the drastic change. Okay, these countries have formed the Sahel Confederation, a regional alliance aimed at resisting Western influence, Western domination, and promoting mutual respect and economic cooperation. So this is what Niger is doing. Again, what is Niger doing? What are the major steps that Niger has taken to help the growth of its economy, to maintain its stronghold in Niger, and also economic dominance in Niger, to the prosperity of the people of Niger? We are saying that we all know the various mineral resources that are in Niger, and uranium is one of them. And I said in my other video that France, the uranium in France, if we see the way people are mining uranium in Niger, it is pitiful. And yet, the streets of Niger, the rural communities, and even the major cities of Niger lack electricity. But France is powered by all this. The military, the nuclear weapons are powered by the uranium that is coming from this country. The phone industries, the Apple's phone, all these things are powered by the uranium that is coming from Niger. And yet, ordinary Nigerians do not have the luxury of this. So the current administration is saying that they are renegotiating the uranium mining contracts that are in Niger. So Niger is renegotiating uranium mining contracts with France, French companies, especially Orano, increasing revenue and ensuring a fairer sharing of profit. Like we said, France has domination over everything in that country, at the level of the financial institutions, the mining industry, the political phase, the economic of that country, the legislation. They control everything. They control everything. But this current administration is saying that we are going to renegotiate the uranium mining contracts within our country, and they want to increase, they want to make sure that what is produced in Niger benefits the people of Niger, the ordinary people of Niger. Yes, so they're also talking about transparency in the mining sector. That is very important. Niger has a great mining sector, so they say the increased transparency in the mining sector is going to reduce French influence in Niger. And I think I support this idea, because you cannot have all the natural, God has blessed that country with all the natural resources, and yet the country is one of the poorest in Africa. Even though it has all these minerals and all of these natural resources, I think it's important that even if France was there, they should be able to have a fair share, treat the people right, and provide and develop the country where they are exploiting all of these things from. So they are also talking about the diversification of the economy. Niger is talking about diversifying its economy, reducing dependence on French-dominated uranium exports. So they want to diversify their economy. This is very important. So it also, Niger has cancelled a French military-based agreement asserting control over national security. When you don't have control over your military, where you don't have control over your economy, where you don't have control over the legal system, when you don't have control over decision making in your country, how do you even call yourself independent? Your financial sector, the finance, you don't have control over. How do you call yourself independent if your military is controlled by others, if the legal system is controlled by others, the political decisions are controlled by others, social decisions are even controlled by others, and the financial sector is controlled largely by others? So how do you even call yourself independent? And this is what this country is saying. We've had enough. So they are cancelling that French military agreement to assert control over the military. So they are also, the president is also more interested in promoting local industries. Local industries, and this is the same vision in Burkina Faso, and this is the same, we'll be talking more on Mali and Guinea in the next week. And these are all, they came together, they sat together, they summarize the lives of the economy, the political, everything in the country. They realize they really do not have control over anything. France has control over virtually everything in these countries. So when you go to the mining sector, they are French-dominated exporting industries. When you go to the financial, the banks are controlled by France. When you go to the legal system, you see that judges there will even have French judges sitting there and making decisions. And all of this, when you look at it, then you cannot tell yourself that you're independent. You are not. They can come in and partner, but they cannot come in and take total control of everything. And so they say they want to promote their own local industries, because of course they are experts, but they've always been suppressed because they feel that they are not qualified enough. And I'm happy that these decisions have been made to reduce the influence of foreign domination, so that the local industry can strive. That is the importance of it. Let the local industry strive and give opportunity for people to showcase their skills and learn more. And this is how we grow, and Africa will grow and be great as we want it to be. This is the vision of our forefathers, the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Jomo Kenyatta, and all the Pan-Africanists. Even Robert Mugabe cried for this. Gaddafi cried for it. All of these leaders, they cried for it, to see a truly independent Africa. And we saw the nationalization of strategic sectors, like Niger wants to nationalize or nationalize strategic sectors like the energy sector, the telecommunication, reducing foreign control. When your communication sector is taken over, boy, you have control over nothing, because they put in the air what they choose to and not what is happening on the ground. When you don't have control over the media, you have control over nothing, because media has destroyed, it has built, and it continues to destroy a lot. When we look at what is happening, when they want to project Africa in the media, when CNN want to show Africa, they show the most poorest parts of Africa. They show people dying, but this is not what Africa is all about. They show very displeasing images of Africa. They project Africa in the most despicable way. And you ask yourself, when people travel to countries like Rwanda, go to South Africa, go to Lagos, Nigeria, or even Abuja, and they go to Tanzania, they see Africa and they ask, but where are all the images coming from? Because they have control over the telecommunication industry. So Niger is saying that they will nationalize strategic sectors like the energy sector, the telecommunication sector, reducing foreign control. And they are also of the opinion that the establishment of the National Development Bank of Niger. So Niger established a National Development Bank to finance local projects and reduce foreign domination on foreign capital, or foreign reliance on foreign capital. This is very crucial. It's the same thing that happened in Burkina Faso. They set up the first export bank, and to take control over their resources and to for the gold in Burkina Faso. And this is the same thing that Niger is doing here. So it also talks about promoting agricultural development in the country. Niger promoted agricultural development to reduce dependence on imported food and increase food security within the country. This is what the government is doing. So it's also talking about strengthening of regional ties. So Niger wants to strengthen regional ties with other African countries, reducing reliance on French-dominated international organization. It's really a pity to know that in a country that we say it's an independent country, everything is dominated by a foreign power. But we are glad to see that these leaders are standing up against this domination. And the arrogance of the French government, and even the way he insults African leaders, is despicable. The way President Ibrahim, what they call him, Emmanuel Macron, disrespect the African leadership. He speaks with so much arrogance, with no respect, forgetting that he is the president of France and not the president of Africa. And I'm glad that these countries are standing up against him. It's important for us to see this, the countries asserting power against the French rule. Africa has suffered enough in the hands of France. We are also seeing review of colonial era borders dispute. So Niger reviewed colonial era border dispute, which with neighboring countries seeking to resolve long-standing issues, which is very important. It's important to be tight with your neighbors, and this is what Niger is trying to do. A dispute that has lasted for a very long time because of the French domination in Niger. They're saying that they are destroying that, and they are trying to build cement good working relationship with their neighbors, and this is what Niger is doing. And so it's very important for Niger to have this influence. And we have seen how these countries are trying to better the lives of ordinary Nigerians. I was watching a documentary and I saw the streets of Niger, and I shed tears considering the natural resources that are in this country, the way they are exploited on a daily basis, and yet the ordinary citizens, they suffer in abject poverty, the worst forms of poverty, hunger. You see the children of Niger and you ask yourself, with all these natural resources, what is the problem? Like I said, I'm not here to promote any military coup d'etats, but I am here to promote development in Africa, for Africa to truly have its full independence, for the countries in Africa to be truly sovereign, because there is need for countries in Africa to be fully independent and cut ties with foreign domination, and have control over its resources and over its economy, over its institutions, over its mining sector, over its energy sector, over its legal systems, over its political system. And we all see what is happening in Kenya, how America is influencing decisions in Kenya. People are scared to say these things, but we must be able to say these things the way they are, because this is what is happening. If you bring a law, you want to introduce this in a country when they are not willing to accept it, you start imposing sanctions on them on issues that come from nowhere. Nobody knows where they come from. So we are truly happy to see how these countries are rising to take control over the economy, their countries, and to cut foreign domination, even though they are still creating alliance with other countries, at least those countries are coming in at a level of mutual respect for one another and respecting each other's sovereignty. Because there is no way the president of Niger can go to France and make a decision in France. It will never happen. They don't even consider him to even be a major or commander or a captain in the army. So they cannot even allow them to make that kind of decision in France. So why do they think they have the authority to come to Africa and make those kind of decisions? So we must be able to, we are supporting African unity. We are supporting African unity. We want to see Africa unite. We want to see Africa fully independent. This is what Kwame Nkrumah cried and spoke about until his death. Africa must be able to stand for itself. You cannot continue to depend and rely on the West, for they are not to be trusted. That's what he said, not me. So there have been a lot of common steps that these countries in the Sahel region have been taking. You see, asserting control over natural resources. These countries are boldly trying to assert control over natural resources, control over their resources, reducing foreign exploitation, promoting economic diversification, reducing dependence and on single commodity or foreign power. So they're increasing transparency and accountability. These are the common steps that the Sahel nations are taking. All these countries in the Sahel, they are trying to increase transparency and accountability in their government dealings, reducing foreign influence, which is good. They are also trying to diversify the diversification of international partnerships. So they are moving away from the traditional kind of partnerships that their countries have had, but to embrace new organization, form new organization, make alliance with other countries, and which is good. Strengthening their relationship and integrating with more African countries, which is very important. They are in the African region. They must be able to build their own alliances within the African continent. So they are strengthening their commitment to African integration, promoting regional cooperation and solidarity, which is what we all need in Africa. So they're also out there promoting local culture. Both of the countries in the Sahel Confederation, they are promoting culture. Like Niger, they promote the local culture, language, and tradition, reducing dominance of French culture in their countries. It's so sickening to see the way France dominate in every level in these countries. It's so sickening. And I'm happy that these people are taking these steps, increasing transparency in government, which is very important. And this is a sickness that has killed many African countries, governance in Africa, because there is a lot of corruption within our African governments. And if these countries are standing up to increase transparency in governance, we must be able to applaud them for the work that they are trying to do. I hope it's not just about talking about it, but actually putting it in action, because once we see the action, we'll all rally up behind them to support them, because Africa needs this level of transparency. So this is what these countries are doing. And they are also trying to empower local commodities. We've seen how they promote agriculture, they promote local industries, self-promoting business owners to grow and make a lot of to improve the economy in their respective countries. So they empower local commodities, increasing their participation in decision making and benefit sharing from natural resources, which is very, very important. So ladies and gentlemen, this is what has been happening in Niger. I know most people are like, oh, since he took over power, what has been going on? A lot has been happening. As a matter of fact, a lot has been happening. And we are so glad to know that this government is doing a lot. So let us just have a look on what has been happening as this video, as we see in the videos that precede this analysis.
Ce jour, 26 juillet 2023, nous, forces de défense et de sécurité, réunis au sein du Conseil national pour la sauvegarde de la patrie, CNSP, avons décidé de mettre fin au régime que vous connaissez. Cela fait suite à la dégradation continue de la situation sécuritaire, la mauvaise gouvernance économique et sociale. Les frontières terrestres et aériennes sont fermées jusqu'à la stabilisation de la situation.
Thousands of coup supporters have held protests around a French military post. This comes a day after West African leaders said they may soon deploy a military force to reinstate ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. But as Jean Keo reports, some of the protesters say they don't want to see Bazoum back in power.
Huge crowds could be seen marching towards a French military base in Niger's capital, Niamey. These are supporters of the recent military takeover, and their anger is targeted at former colonial power France and the West African regional bloc ECOWAS.
Because of this situation that France wants to impose on us, we don't agree with France. We want French soldiers to leave our country and go to their country. This is Niger, not France. This is Niger, not France.
Yes, we are here for an equal partnership. We are here for a fixed partnership. We are here for 50-50 partnership. We are not here for a dark partnership in the shadows, which is what France has done for years, decades, centuries, controlling us. In Africa, we've studied, we know everything. We are now intellectuals, and we are here to get France out of the way.
France has indicated it will support the activation of a standby force by ECOWAS.
They must accept that General Tchiani, as the president of the CNSP, is the authority that controls Niger. If they accept that, then I'm convinced that the military will be more at ease to be able to discuss other conditions, such as whether the former President Mohamed Bazoum should be freed, under what conditions he is freed. Are there things to blame him for? Why are we holding him and all that? No problem. But as long as ECOWAS thinks that Tchiani is just some aide-de-camp and should stay an aide-de-camp, it's clear there'll be no dialogue.
ECOWAS has imposed sanctions on Niger, including closing its air and land borders, a move that could cripple the country's economy. But coup leaders say they will not yield to pressure to stand down. Jane Keo, CGTN.
As thousands took to the streets in Niger's capital today, the protests turned violent. Crowds attacking the outside of the French embassy, burning a perimeter door, and breaking windows, but not breaching the walls. We were driving through the capital when we saw the protests largely peaceful, with most there to show support for the Nigerian military leaders who have locked up the country's democratically elected president and claimed control. At the same time, leaders from neighboring countries held an emergency summit, demanding the release of the president or else.
Such measures may include the use of force.
The U.S. government has not officially called this a coup. If they did, they'd have to suspend more than $400 million in aid to Niger, as well as critical military cooperation to battle terror groups in West Africa.
Nations around the world have condemned this coup, but as they cut ties with Niger, the concern is this nation could pivot towards Russia for its security assistance. Kate?
Matt, there have been 8 coups in Africa since 2020, 6 of them in former French colonies. Now, the French have remained much more involved in their colonies than, for example, the British have. And there's been this surge of anti-French resentment, mainly amongst young people, many of whom have supported these coups. Now, that's gone on at the same time as 2 other things. First, jihadi groups, Islamic State and Al-Qaeda gaining ground in Sahelian countries, and also Russia looking for new allies, partly because it's lost so many because of the war in Ukraine. That means that Russia is here in this part of Africa looking to increase its influence. So the coup here in Niger, it's not just something that happens in Africa. This has global implications.
Who would have thought that the aftermath of a coup would lead to such an outpouring of enthusiasm, at least amongst supporters of the military takeover in Niger and those who want to prove their loyalty, even fighting over flags to show who's the most patriotic. Not much sympathy here for the ousted civilian president who's under palace arrest and his ministers who've been imprisoned. The perennial problems of corruption, insecurity and poverty can now all be blamed on the ancien regime.
Nous sommes dans le bon chemin de résoudre ça puisqu'on a commencé à emprisonner ceux qui ont bouffé l'argent du Niger, l'argent des pauvres. Ils sont déjà en prison. Il y aura justice. Il y aura, Inch'Allah, justice.
On ne peut pas manger la justice.
Non, on ne peut pas manger la justice, mais quand même, les pauvres auront maintenant leur part dans la gestion. Ils auront leur mot dans la gestion.
Avant la France, avant Macron, tous unis, vive le Niger!
The old colonial power, which sent troops to help the former government combat jihadis, has been forced out. Even a motorbike can have a special Nigerian identity because the coup is presented as a way for the country to regain its sovereignty.
These kind of rallies are being held day and night across the capital. The aim isn't just to get people to praise their new leaders, but also to denounce France and neighbouring countries. That way, any economic problems can be blamed not on the coup, but on outsiders and colonialists.
The new military governor of Niamey is keen to explain the series of coups that have swept across the Sahel.
C'est des actions ponctuelles, c'est pas une épidémie. C'est des actions salvatrices qui viennent à temps pour mettre une fin à quelque chose que le peuple décrit.
But the military weren't elected by the people of Niger.
Oui, il n'y a pas d'élection. Il y a une légitimité.
Mais il y a un coup d'État.
Mais c'est légitime.
Pourquoi?
Mais parce que c'est légitime, c'est le peuple qui le veut.
To bolster the argument, enter an influential Pan-African activist, reportedly funded by Russia's Wagner Group.
Where are you from?
Channel 4, Britain.
I hope you will not demonize us. That is true. I know European media.
Kemi Seba styles himself on Malcolm X and supports the coup in Niger as he did that in neighbouring Mali, which has welcomed Wagner Group fighters to combat the jihadis.
Le Niger appartient aux Nigériens et l'Afrique appartient aux Africains.
But what can the Russians do?
And I said that military, in the world of military, Russia can help us, like Iran can help us, like Cuba can help us, like Turkey can help us. But all these nations need to understand that military cooperation doesn't mean colonization. And if they try to do the same things that French oligarchy had made with us, I swear God is my witness, we will fight them, definitely.
The Russians are already taking
Too much question in English. Thank you very much. Thank you, take care.
Thank you.
He and the coup leaders agree with the ousted civilian regime that jihadi groups who shot this video in Niger just before the coup must be crushed. Niger hasn't invited the Russians to help, but may yet do so, even though in neighbouring Mali, the jihadis have only grown stronger after 2 coups, the withdrawal of the French and the intervention of the Wagner Group. Just one man dared to suggest to me, maybe there is no military solution, either on the battlefield or in the presidential palace, and the coup will likely lead to further instability.
Un pouvoir militaire est forcément pire qu'une démocratie, ça, la question ne se pose même pas. Un pouvoir militaire ne peut pas être plus efficace, ça c'est certain. Et je pense qu'on est en train de se tromper très lourdement et on risque de le payer très cher. Et donc parce que ce qui est en train de se passer, c'est qu'on va avoir des régimes militaires qui vont vouloir s'installer de façon durable.
It's all singing and dancing on Nigerian TV at the moment. Praise for General Tchiani, the coup leader, who hasn't actually appeared in public since the coup. In theory, you can say what you want, but that may change, as Musa Changani, who's been imprisoned by previous regimes, knows only too well.
On connaît nos droits, on ne va pas accepter de se taire. Voilà. Mais on sait que ça peut être dur, voilà, il peut y avoir des conséquences, il faut les assumer, c'est tout.
People gather for rallies each night in different neighborhoods. Most have known nothing but insecurity and endemic poverty all their lives. The leaders of the fifth coup since independence from France in 1960 are promising sovereignty and dignity. Who could blame Nigériens for hoping that will propel them to a better future?
Les forces de défense et de sécurité du Niger sont républicaines. Elles ne sont jamais intervenues sur la scène politique sans raison valable. Chaque fois qu'elles interviennent, il y a forcément une raison. Elles ne le font pas pour s'accaparer et rester au pouvoir. Elles font pour un temps. Lorsqu'elles remettent de l'ordre, elles se retirent.
But for the moment, the soldiers aren't going anywhere, just as they're not standing down in Burkina Faso or Mali. Across French-speaking West Africa, the lines are being redrawn as France is forced out and Russia works out where and when to make.
U.S. media reports say Washington has agreed to withdraw troops from Niger. The base in the West African country has been key in counterterrorism efforts in the Sahel region. But Niger's ruling junta canceled a military cooperation agreement with Washington last month and demanded the troop withdrawal. Protests against the U.S. presence have taken place since a military coup last July. The U.S. currently has around 1,000 soldiers in Niger. Let's cross over to Isio Erich in Berlin. He is a journalist who specializes in the Sahel region. Isio, it's nice to have you here. Why has the U.S. government agreed to withdraw its soldiers from Niger?
I think the question leads to the core of the problem. After all, Niger is a sovereign state, so why wouldn't they? I think the U.S. learned a lot from the events surrounding the retreat of French soldiers from Niger. The French government didn't want to leave, and in the end they were pretty much forced out, and all ties between Niger and France have been cut ever since, at least for the moment. The US don't want that to happen, so they try to maintain a relationship somehow.
Meanwhile, Niger is getting closer and closer to Moscow. What led to Niger's closer ties with Russia?
I think it's a lot about sovereignty. The coup d'etat is seen in a big part of the population as a move towards a liberation from a corrupt political system in Niger and also from oppression by foreign powers. So the idea of sovereignty is very high in the popularity, and liberating themselves from having one partner only, in that case the West, is seen as a means of gaining more leverage in the construction of a new world order with Niger in a better place in it.
I'm curious about your perspective on this. Will the U.S. withdrawal affect its ability to wield influence in Niger?
Absolutely. There are more than 1,000 soldiers stationed in Niger at the moment, and it's a very important asset. And once they're gone, it will be very difficult to have an idea what's going on in the region. And that definitely makes a different situation for the US and its ability to stay in contact with the junta as well, because there will be less personnel, and the balance of assets will shift because there will be Russians in place at the moment, and nobody knows for how long they will stay. So there are a lot of open questions concerning that.
So give us some perspective here. How has Niger's recent political shift affected its relationship with its former Western allies, for example, France? And what alliances has it formed with other countries other than Russia?
At the moment, I wouldn't say that Niger has created new alliances. It's trying to maneuver itself into a situation where it's not siding with either side in a multipolar world. And that is seen as a means to gain more leverage, as I said. There have been discussions, that is said at least, with Iran about the uranium exploitation in Niger. China is raising its influence in Niger and Turkish politics as well. So there are discussions with many sides, but at the moment, the goal of the government of Niger, or the junta, the military government, is to not side with anyone indefinitely. They also say that the Russian military advisors that just arrived in the country, they will leave as soon as their job is done. But if that really happens, is something that has to be seen in the future.
And we're going to have to end it there. Our thanks to journalist Isio Erich.
Niger's military rulers have welcomed a decision by France to withdraw its troops from the country. The army, you may remember, ousted the elected president in July, ending Niger's cooperation with France. France used to be the colonial power in Niger. Now, President Emmanuel Macron, France, says that 1,500 French soldiers who were stationed in Niger will leave by the end of this year.
After months of rising tensions and protests, Nigerians demanding the withdrawal of French troops can celebrate. France does not recognize the coup leaders as legitimate.
The only legitimate leader of Niger is President Bazoum, who was elected by his people. Today, he's being held hostage. He's a victim of this coup because he was carrying out brave reforms and because there's ethnic score settling going on. There's a lot of political cowardice there. That's why France has decided to bring its ambassador and several diplomats back to France. We are putting an end to our military cooperation with the current Niger authorities because they don't want to fight terrorism anymore.
People in the capital, Niamey, welcomed the news.
The French military must leave immediately because we don't need them. They've been saying they'd help us for decades, but we haven't seen any change. We want them to leave our country and go home, because we are staying.
I'm speaking on behalf of all the people of Niger. We're very proud of the departure of the French army and its ambassador, because they've provided nothing here in Niger. They came to at least eradicate terrorism, and terrorism is only getting worse.
Until the takeover by the military junta, Niger was a key security partner for Western countries, including France and the United States. The departure of French forces is likely to heighten concerns about Russia's growing influence in Africa. The Wagner mercenary group is already active in Mali, where they are allies of the junta there. But with the mercenary group weakened due to the war in Ukraine and the withdrawal of French forces, there are rising concerns that Islamist groups will make gains in the region.
All right, for more now, I'm joined by Chris Ogun-Modede, the Associate Editor for World Politics Review in Senegal's capital, Dakar. Chris, it's good to have you with us. There have been rising tensions in Niger in the past few weeks, with Nigerians insisting that French troops get out of the country. I mean, why do they want to see this withdrawal if the troops were there to help with the security situation and the threat against Islamist terrorism?
Well, the answer to the question is that many Nigerians simply do not believe any longer that the presence of French troops necessarily contributes to a better security in their country. You know, there's been a lot of in the last couple of years, but more so under President Bazoum, who stepped up security relations with the West, with France in particular. There's been many concerns in Niger that the presence of French troops on their soil since last year, when French troops withdrew from neighboring Mali, many Nigerians simply saw that as a compromise on their sovereignty, and the fact that it's, of course, the relationship, dates all the way back to the colonial era. Many of them simply saw it as too bound up in many elements of an unequal partnership that they simply do not want any more of.
And I'm just wondering, Chris, the average person in Niger, what do they consider to be a greater threat to their security, the presence of French troops in the country, or this growing Islamist insurgents?
Well, I mean, for one thing, it's very hard to speak for the average person in Niger. It's a large country. People have very many different views, some of which, most of which are nuanced, some of which seem like they're contradictory, but when you understand the politics there, and many would reject the premise of the question and see it really as a false binary, because they would argue that there are a bunch of structural conditions that were created by the colonial legacy between France and Niger that have exposed themselves in the security crisis in Niger and the neighboring region. So for many folks, not just in Niamey, but broadly across the country, they see the two things as linked. So they don't quite see it as an either-or proposition of do you want the French presence or do you want the jihadists? They think the two are very much linked in a variety of ways, some of which, can be contested, but some of which definitely have their, historical underpinnings.
And we're seeing French troops withdrawing from, the entire Sahel region, including Mali, Burkina Faso. Can we say then that Islamist terrorism will most likely, or at least the threat of it, will increase now with these peacekeeping forces gone? Or does that get back to this binary situation you were describing?
Well, I should point out that French troops are still in Chad, which is in the Sahel. There's no discussion of what will come next there as well. There's no telling what will happen there. But more to the question you're asking, I think for many, not just in Niger but across the region, there is a sense of which they recognize the difficulties that are likely to come up with the departure of French troops, but at the same time, they do point out that with the presence of French troops, the security didn't get better. So at the end of the day, what have they really gained in terms of the partnership with France? And perhaps this is an opportunity for local and regional security and political elites to finally think very deeply, not just about the security situation, but more broadly about building a proper state that can secure lives and bring more prosperity to people.
Chris Ogun-Modedo from the World Politics Review in Dakar. Chris, good to have you with us. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time on this channel. And like we said, today we are focusing on Niger. As Niger stands at the crossroad, the implications of the 2023 coup d'etat continue to cut across the region and beyond. So General Abdourahamane and his regime has taken bold steps to reduce Niger's, to redefine Niger's trajectory. But these actions come with significant risks. The rejection of foreign influence, the reliance of international alliance, and the ongoing struggle to secure the nation against the jihadist threat has shaped the future of Niger for years to come. And this is very important and crucial. So we must not only look at what has he done, but the military part, the security of Niger is most important. But we know the threats that have been coming, the different coups that has also been organized from foreign domination to take back power so that they can continue to have control over the resources of Niger because they can't survive without it. But the current regime says they cannot. The question remains, will Niger military leaders succeed in their quest to forge a new alliance, sovereign path for their country, or will these bold moves lead to greater instability and international isolation? As the war watches, Niger's fate hangs in the balance. Stay tuned as we continue to follow this story and provide you with updates on these critical issues. Once again, I say thank you very much for your time on this channel. Thank you for your support on the channel. Thank you for your love and your subscription. Like I said, if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always coming back to listen. And I hope that we continue to have a very mature and respectful conversation at the comment section. And for those of you who are coming here the first time, thank you for choosing to watch this video, and kindly subscribe, like, and share the comment. But not forget to share your thoughts in the comment section. God bless you, and God bless you again.